Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show. Today, I had the honor of chatting with Mr. John Dak Morton. That's right, the hotshot gunner from The Empire Strikes Back. Our conversation was so much fun. We get some insight on what it was like working on the film, amongst other projects that he's been involved with throughout his career. He is a true gentleman. I hope you guys enjoyed this as much as I did. Again, I want to say thank you for your support. It means a lot to me. And if you feel the force through this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Without further ado, Mr. John Dak Morton. Kicking off. Yeah, there's always I've been having issues sometimes too with email. So getting emails back and forth. Like they'll just appear in the spam folder.
Yeah.
It's strange. But Mr. Morton, I'm very excited to chat with you.
Okay. I see you
It's
got all your Star Wars gear behind you.
yeah. Yeah, I've been a collector for a while. Um Ever since I was a kid, really.
Well, there
And
you
then
go.
I just kind of got back into it. And but you, sir, you're multi-talented and creative. I
How
didn't
did you
realize.
get in it? You get in touch with Jimmy?
Oh yeah, Mr. I got to give a thanks to him real quick because this, like, truly, this is a special experience. A friend of mine that I had on the podcast a few times, we talk outside of doing some streams, and he's like, I got an email here that I found. He's like an expert researcher. Like he doesn't show his face. He goes by a different screen name. Very polite gentleman. We get along really well. And he's like, I got an email that I found going through some old interviews and documentation. I don't know if it works. I'll give it to you and take a shot. And I'm like, well, absolutely. And Mr. Luceno got back to me and he mentioned you and he mentioned me to you. And that blew me away. I was like, I couldn't believe it. So I'm like,
Yeah,
I will.
he and I are real close.
Yeah. You guys known each other for a long time, I would assume.
No, we've had mutual friends. I don't think I finally met Jimmy until about 2015, something like that. But
Oh, okay.
it was one of those things where it was love at first sight, and so we've been best buds ever since.
That's a sometimes people just connect in a way,
Yeah.
and it's magic as soon as you know, just it ignites. What is that? Must have been at a celebration or some sort of a event.
No, I was here in Annapolis.
Oh,
He lives in Annapolis, and that's where I am in Maryland. And I was the PTO president, and my treasurer was a guy named Harry Zolkauer. And the Zolkauers, it turns out, were friends with the Lucenos. And Harry had always said, "Hey, you got to meet my friend Jimmy." One of his sons dated one of Harry's daughters, and so for years he kept on saying, "I got to put you guys together." And then I don't know, at some point in 2015, why I know that is it was just before Anaheim, and I think if I recall, Jimmy went out to Anaheim with Karen Ann and his wife, and so I did a couple of interviews with him at a local coffee shop that's kind of hip in Annapolis called 49 West. And the first interview was before Anaheim, and the second interview was after. So we were kind of that was the theme, What do you think's going to happen at Celebration this year? And then the next one was, kind of an after action report. Um, and I have been well at that time I was doing uh, pieces for StarWars.com,
okay. Yep.
and so I had about 15, maybe 10, 15 pieces, and then friends over in London had a website called Jedi News. It's now Fantha Tracks, and some of the pieces that Star Wars wasn't interested in, I would pitch to Jedi News, and they said, "Hey, yeah, an interview with Jim Luceno would be great." So I said, "How about two?" They said, "Sure." So Jedi News published those two interviews.
Oh wow. Yeah, it's funny how some of that stuff works. And do you still do pieces for them at all? Like for Star
Uh,
Wars?
no, it
No.
just, I've got too much going on. And,
Yeah.
a lot of when Disney took over Star Wars or, Lucasfilm, the thrust of their pieces were a little different. And you had to, go through a bunch of wickets that,
Yeah.
and I just said,
It's
I'm done with this.
not worth the time.
Well, no, I mean, it was just they weren't interested in some of the suggestions. One in particular really irritated me. I ran into a woman in Amarillo who was with the Mandalorian Mercs, and she worked for Bell Textron. And I don't think she was an engineer, but she was really she what she did with the armor was an extraordinary piece of work.
Yeah.
So obviously she had somebody that was able to work with her, who had experience in composite materials and finishes, and it was honestly the best Boba Fett um, armor I had really seen. I've seen some really good pieces,
I was gonna
and
say,
so I said, hey, I'm going to pitch you to StarWars.com, because this is just the kind of stuff they're really good at, and I don't want to write the story. I think you should. And so they just kind of blew me off. They said, well, is she a professional writer? And I said, no, man, she's a fan. You're going to get the story of, why she did this and how she did this. And, come on, you got people writing stuff on Star Wars pastries,
yeah,
you know,
yes,
on StarWars.com. And this is kind of like Ashley Eckstein. I mean, she's not a professional. She's in the Mandalorian Mercs, and they just no. Now, if she's not a writer, we're not interested. And I just said, you know what? Goodbye.
yeah. That's a
I
shame.
haven't I haven't pitched anything to them since then, which was about 2017. And as far as Jedi News and Fantha Tracks goes, um, where I ended up, well, what I used to do was I do kind of after action reports on conventions, and pretty much with both StarWars.coms and Jedi News, pretty much featuring the 501st or the Rebel Legion or the Mercs, and taking photographs of everybody that was there, who were trooping, and also plug, what they and the convention were doing, um, supporting whatever charity, with Blaster Trooper and what have you. So it was really kind of, building the, as Star Wars ambassador kind of
Yeah.
thing. And then I decided, no, I'm sort of, I've done that, and that's, I'm more interested in actually interviewing people, because, the journalist in me did a lot of that throughout my latter career, and so I started doing interviews with like people that were at the various conventions. John Ratzenberger, for example, uh, Jimmy. Um, but it got to be too much of a hassle, going back and forth and arranging. I just said no.
Traveling.
I got my day job, so to speak. That's yeah.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I think if something fell into my lap, if they said, "Hey, you're going to be where," uh, I don't know.
So and so is want to
Yeah,
do this. Yeah, I'll
yeah.
do it. Yeah.
I'll get their story, but I'm sort of not as curious as I used to be.
Well, you've been doing this for quite some time. Like I knew you were pretty heavily affiliated with the 501st, which I got to give them a shout out because they do a
Oh
great
yeah,
job. They're
yeah.
phenomenal, and people really put in the work to
Yeah,
make it look good.
my first convention was in Hackensack in 1997, and I sponsored, or I supported Make a Wish. That was the first one, and then I didn't get inducted into the 501st until I think 2013,
Mm.
and then the Rebel Legion, and then the Mandalorian Mercs. And so since that period of time, I've been very, very involved with those folks. For example, the last convention I did last week in Ocean City, Maryland. The organizer put me right across from where the 501st booth was, and the Mandalorians were next to them, and the Rebel Legion. So I was right there with all of them and
Right in
just
the
hanging
action.
out. It was great, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what Mr. Luceno said. You get involved, and you're a gentleman, and you just embrace, and the fans embrace you, and it's a good thing. And going back to what you said about the gal that wrote the piece that you were trying to pitch, that's a shame. Like that,
It really is.
it's like a fan. Some of the fans are the most, like, they care so much about what they put their time or effort into, and who cares if she's not a writer,
Well,
right?
it was ridiculous, and I honestly, when I first started working with StarWars.com, was well before Disney came in, but the whole culture changed, and it was very embarrassing for me because I really wanted to support her. Uh, and the guy that was my contact there, it was like he had a different program that he had to answer to.
Mm,
It was very surprising, and I just said, okay, if that's where, I mean, come on, she's not a professional writer. What's
yeah,
that got to do with Star Wars?
right. And she's obviously put a lot of effort into what she was trying to provide here. Like,
Yeah,
you can see she did the work. It wasn't a half-assed job.
yeah. I mean, and some of the other stuff that's, I mean, I stopped going to the site. It was like Star Wars cookies and Star Wars.
Yeah, I've seen that too. Yeah, it's kind of
Just
like, well,
okay.
I mean, some of the stuff, some of the shows that they do, I'm a fan of it all, but like, I notice like you said, there's a difference. There is a difference. Things have
Yeah,
changed. It's more, I don't know. I don't know if corporate,
it's
the
more corporate.
the politics behind it,
Yeah, it's more corporate.
and that, not to jump off subject, but that just kind of seems like the way the whole world's going.
Oh
Is
yeah.
just, whether what side of the line or fence you want to say you're on, with your beliefs in the governmental system or presidential and all that stuff. But it's just, yeah, it's like everything's corporate America,
Yeah.
and the good people don't really get the break that they deserve anymore.
Well, I think look, movies is it's a collaborative art, filmmaking, and going back to how George started, he had to thread the needle between his artistic vision and what 20th Century Fox was demanding of him. And over time, as he became instantaneously successful, he was able to claw back much more artistic control. And certainly with Empire Strikes Back, he had it, and even more so with Return of the Jedi. Um, what happened between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi was he had a great relationship with, I think, one of the unsung heroes of Star Wars, which is Gary Kurtz, who was the executive producer. Um, and at that time, um, Gary and George sort of parted the ways because George, in Gary's estimation, had gone a little bit more commercial in seeing the Star Wars, valuing the toys and all of the spin off stuff, the
Right.
merchandise, a little more than where Gary was coming from. And they were very collaborative. But anyway, that's sort of when things began to change with George. But he, that was part of his vision. Um, I in the '90s, and then again later in the teens, was approached by Lucasfilm in the book division, and I got very much involved in very in projects that were in the end stillborn, um, but and that's all right.
Yeah, yeah.
They what I discovered, and I think other people have said this, is George George had an approach to his work where he created a sandbox, if you will, to which he brought his own toys. And then he would find people that had particular skill sets, um, droid builders, people who would be droid builders. And he let them, and he recognized in their skill set um, something that was genius. And so he gave a great deal of freedom to a lot of these people, the droid builders, like Bill Hargreaves, um, to go off and do whatever they wanted, and then they would present this stuff to him, and he'd say yeah or no, but that's the way it was. He wasn't a micromanager, yeah.
You're
So
no, right.
he invited all of this talent to come in. Um, Ralph Quarry. I mean, that's oh gosh, okay, he liked that, and I could go on and on with people that he
Oh, I
brought
bet.
in various ways. Bruce Logan, who was a special effects guy. Um, so all of these folks brought something to the table. But once you had either a story like Jimmy, or and introduced characters like Tim Zahn did and what have you, once they came into the sandbox, then they were all part of Star Wars. It was George's.
Yes.
They were now his toys, and what those toys could be used, somebody else could play with them. That was kind of the contract, and it worked beautifully. Uh, Unfortunately, when you get and the people that worked for Lucasfilm um, had a lot of latitude to explore their own interests and what have you. I think when they got into the use of the Lucasfilm story group with Pablo Hidalgo and Leland Chi, who was the whole what do they call it, the
The
hologram?
the hologram keepers, the
Yeah,
timeline gurus.
yeah, it was all the continuity stuff. But
Yeah.
that was how it was all theoretically going to be managed um, with Disney, and it was a great vision. It was right about the time when Rebels came in, because Leland Chi and Pablo Hidalgo, they were fans. They grew up with Star Wars, so they were good stewards for Lucas of carrying on the legacy. But then, as the Disney equities and the need to make their $4.9 million back, or what
Yeah.
was it, billion,
That was a
um,
lot.
they suddenly the corporate Bob Iger stuff came in, and probably the same thing happened with Marvel. I don't know. I'm not a Marvel person. Um, it just it got complicated. Um, Disney is responsive to its shareholders, and shareholders aren't myth makers
No. They
like George and
they're
all
just
the rest of us that are part of Star Wars.
yeah. They just
Anyway,
want
so that's I think how the drift has sort of happened over time, and it is what it is. I mean, it's
yeah, we
that's what
can't
creation is all about.
yeah, we can't go back in time, can we? Not yet anyway. Same, we can't hit 88 miles per hour. um well, do you keep up when you read all the material, the books and
Yeah,
stuff?
yeah.
No.
I
Okay.
mean, my wife and I we looked at Rebels, kept up with Rebels, and then we started with Mandalorian, and we've seen a bit of the Book of Boba Fett, but no, I don't. You know, and I'm not really an expert on really much of anything. You know, I
Well,
didn't.
it sounds like it to me.
I didn't. Well, yeah, I didn't read the all the great books, and
Yeah,
you know, Tim Zahn. I have Tim's books, and he's a dear friend, as is Jimmy and Mike Stackpole. Those are the three authors that I guess I know best.
that yeah, yeah.
But I don't. I really don't know their work.
Okay.
I think, you know, I remember Mike's books when Lucasfilm was interested in looking at me to come on board. They were the kind of things that I was interested in doing. You know, his Rogue Squadron series.
Yeah, yeah.
I like those a lot.
They're good.
Yeah,
They're really good. Yeah. Actually, honestly, I've been about 2.5 years into getting into reading all the material. Like I
yeah,
knew about some of it when growing up, but I didn't realize that the lore in the books there's just so much. So
yeah,
like I'm currently reading. I've been reading nonstop, and it's a great experience. It's a fun ride, and that's why it's like I want to talk to these. You know, these.
yeah.
It's a crazy how somebody can put things, from their mind and a vision and bring it to life. It's exciting.
Well, um, yeah. I mean, the reason why I was interested in Stackpole is, you know, the journalism that I was doing after I left show business and public relations up in New York was defense and aerospace. And so, you know, the Mike's stuff was tactical and operational.
Yeah.
I could relate to that. Whereas the other stuff that you're talking about is, you know, creating or participating in science fiction or space opera worlds. And honestly, I have not had any interest in science
That's
fiction.
not
No,
your cup of tea. Yeah.
no. I tried the Foundation trilogy, you know, when I was a hippie, and because everybody said, you know, that's where you start. Nah, didn't go for it. I was interested in other things. And then everybody, when in that age, was into Dune or Stranger in a Strange Land. Nah. But the thing about Jimmy Luceno is he was always interested in science fiction, you know, from his, you know, childhood, I guess, or his teen years. And so he knew the opus that's out there. And so he was able to, you know, make the jump into the Star Wars world.
Right.
If that had been successful for me, you know, I would have been in the, you know, more in where Mike's writing was.
Forte is, yeah.
Yeah, in fact, you know, almost Star Wars Insider came that close to finally publishing for their 40th anniversary edition the piece that I did, which was expanding the role playing game biography of Dak. And it was called Escape from Callist, and I put a lot of effort in that, and went back and forth with the Lucasfilm, and they finally pulled the plug on it. And I think it was probably because, you know, I was writing it in a, you know, in a mode that was archaic from the standpoint of where, you know, Lucasfilm was taking it, and you know, it was you know, it was an escape story from a, you know, a prison system.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and it was, dare I say, you know, kind of masculine. And they were pushing in all that, you know, the
Yeah,
film
yeah.
time, the you know, the feminine character, you know, the female characters.
Right. Man, that'd been well, of course it would be masculine. I mean, if you're escaping from a prison system, you're not gonna, can
Yeah,
I please have the key?
yeah. But you
Right.
know, I did a nod to it because the sort of the person that knew how to get Dak out of prison was his mother, who designed the security system. So she was the one that
Ah,
enabled him to get out. So I was trying to find a female character that could develop if this thing, built. So I wasn't being stupid. I mean, I've got daughters, one of which went to the Naval Academy and was a naval officer. So I mean, I'm not that kind of
right.
character who objects to women being the heroes in the new Star Wars. It's just that wasn't the story that I was trying to tell.
That'd be
I
interesting.
don't
And
think
that's
it kind of fit the
the direction.
overall concept of where a lot of Star Wars is going.
Right. Right. Oh, that'd be nice to have my hands on that. Just saying.
Huh?
I said it'd be nice to have my hands on that. Take a read of that. That sounds interesting.
What, my piece?
Yeah.
I can send it to you.
Awesome. That I
Yeah,
appreciate
if you
that.
want to put it on your site, you can.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's nothing going to happen to it now. So, I had it on my Facebook and in episodes.
Oh, really?
Now it was about a 4,000 or 5,000 word piece. It was, it was going to go into
Right.
Star Wars Insider, so it's not a full book, but it was intended to be the first of a series. So, Star Wars Insider was really, really big on the idea, and you know, they were
That's a
very
shame.
embarrassed that it got yanked.
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of fans would have liked that.
And
Well,
I was
how did you get involved in acting? Like, what was that whole pursuit? And was that something that inspired you growing up that you
not
wanted?
really. I sort of had creative tension in my life. There was a part of me that wanted to be a naval officer like my father and go to the Naval Academy, which was the practical aspects. And I certainly, as a guy growing up in the 50s and then the early 60s, there was, the Second World War and, all of my family that were involved in the Navy, and they really were. That was a big deal. But then I discovered Bob Dylan. And there was a side of me that kind of went, "Ooh, I
I
think I'd
like
like to be
that.
like this." And
Yeah.
so I went to school with a lot of people who, were connected to the village, Greenwich Village, and so I was very much a part of all of that folk music, and picked up the guitar and started playing guitar. And I didn't go to the Naval Academy. I went to George Washington, which was kind of like the NYU of DC, and played music, a lot of music. And when I was done with my naval service and finished my graduate degrees, which were both in international affairs, um, I did my thesis research in London at the London School of Economics and made a lot of friends there. I just decided that I wanted to go back to London. My mother was English, and so I had been over in Europe as a kid many times when Dad was in the Sixth Fleet, and so I knew my British family pretty well and I had friends. So I went to London with a fellow musician friend of mine, um, and we both set up in London, intending to work, in a band, get a band going.
Yeah.
And we ended up going to France with a friend of ours to soundtrack a documentary film, and that was when the '60s sort of ended for me, because the whole thing, was a disaster. And I came back to London, and I was working as a theater electrician to make ends meet. And periodically, once or twice a week, I was doing the floor spots in the folk circuit. And a British director came in to see me at the Troubadour, the London's Troubadour, and after said, "Hey, you're really good. Um, have you ever acted?" And I said, "Yeah, I have." And he said, "Well, what are your credits?" So I gave him my high school credit, not telling him it was high school. I said, "Yeah,
Right.
well, I was Billy Budd and Billy Budd." "Oh, yeah. you'd be great, Billy Budd. And then I was the American Dream in Edward Albee's American Dream. Oh yeah, you'd be great in that too. Well, listen here. Um, Clearly, you've got stage presence, and you're, you can act. And I need a guy who's an American who plays guitar and who's got a ponytail, which I've got again.
Check
And
and check.
I was I had all the right, and I've got this musical which needs you. And I said, okay. And he said, if I ever get this on stage, would you like to be in it? And I said, sure. Give me a call. And so a year later, at this time, believe it or not, I'm working at the Rocky Horror Show as a stage lighting guy. And I'm getting my equivalent of a green card, which was a work permit. So everything was cool. And I just gotten married. And he calls up and says, yeah, it's going to be, 5 weeks at the Orange Tree Theater, which was a good pub theater in Richmond, just outside of London. And I'm sorry, this has to be a Shaggy Dog story because it's a long story.
Oh, yeah.
So I was able to get 5 weeks off, and the show went up, and it became a smash hit. And they said, we're going to put this on again Christmas time. This was 1975, and we're going to bring in this guy Jeremy. What was his name? Jeremy Paul, who's a writer from Upstairs Downstairs, to tidy up the book. And I'd gotten the musicians together to be in to back me up. So it ran again in New Improved, and it became an even bigger hit. And West End management came to see it, and when it finished right after Christmas, they transferred us directly into London's West End. At which point, I got an agent and a union card, and we ran for only 8 weeks, alas. And the agent said, hey, you've got something that's solid gold, but you're not really an actor, are you? And I said, no, a stage actor. And I said, no, not really. But I think you do well in film. And so she saw that she could make a living, off of me in film pretty easily for whatever reason. And she wasn't hard up, trust me. She had Helen Mirren, she had James Mason. I mean, she was a big, a tiny little boutique agency. Maggie Parker was her name. And so she introduced me to Miriam Brickman, who was a casting director. I mean, that's the next thing in films, that the agent puts you around so that you get to meet all the casting directors that do this. And Miriam put me up for Bridge Too Far, Richard Attenborough film. And I was cast as Robert Redford's chaplain in that film. And that was my first credit. It was an amazing experience. It was all done in Holland. And from there, I was off and running. I did Superman 2, Flash Gordon, Cuba, whatever, and Empire Strikes Back. I did a whole bunch of films, and then a couple of BBC series.
Yeah, Oppenheimer. That's a whole other situation there. Yeah.
Yeah. I worked on that film for series for 5 months. It's great.
Yeah. Well, you had the look. You had everything going for you, it sounds like. I mean, you got the ponytail, the guitar.
They dyed my hair brown because the guy I was playing, Robert Wilson, had glasses, which I didn't have at that time, and brown hair, slicked back like Robert McNamara. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. Great. And Sam Waterston was Oppenheimer, and it was really neat.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. Well,
so that's my story.
Yeah, but that's awesome. I mean, you
serendipity. Yeah.
The Bob Dylan thing. I wanted to be a rock star too, just so you know, but that didn't pan out for me. I did do some electrical work. I did that for a while. I was going to school to be an electrician. I actually worked in the naval shipyard for a while. I was an electrical manager.
Where was that?
In Marinette, Wisconsin, the Fincantieri Marine.
Is that where Peterson is?
Uh,
It did the PT boats. There's
yeah,
a,
I believe so. Yeah,
yeah, there's a well-known small shipyard, Peterson.
we
I,
did.
it's up
We're
there somewhere.
we were doing the littoral combat ships,
Oh, the LCS,
the
yeah.
LCSs. Yep, that's what we were doing. So I've worked with NAVC before, and
So have I.
yeah, yeah. I was gonna say, yeah, you've got a pretty good background in that department. Actually, the president. I met the Secretary of Defense. That was pretty wild.
Which one?
I don't even remember his name. I was just kind of shocked because we were surrounded by a bunch of, high class individuals with suits and glasses on, like you would see in a movie. They bring in the whole team. It was actually the president came and the VP actually came. So Trump came and Pence came. I didn't go to work that day because I always get a little nervous. There's always something in the back of my mind. And a few weeks before they would come through our offices and they would black out our windows. I mean, it's a whole program that they run through there. They barricaded with Connex boxes, like pass for people to walk through. Shut the town down for Pete's sake. I mean, obviously, I was invited to go to be there, but I always, I'm just skeptical sometimes. Just that's a big deal. That's a big deal when a president comes to a local
Yeah.
town or anywhere, really.
Yeah, the LCS is a controversial ship in the Navy. A lot of people didn't
Yeah.
feel that the modules worked, and it was an engineer's dream. But I don't know. I don't know how the operational types feel about it. I think
Well,
the do they still are they still doing acquisition of one of them, or did they I know they down selected the one.
yeah. I
Is
think
that
they got
still the one?
one. Yeah. There's one left, from my understanding. I haven't been there now in 3 years. I walked away from the job. Really, it's a very high stress, high pressure environment to be
Yeah,
in. For one, working on that side of the line. Um, my grandfather passed away, and I called, said I'm not coming in today. Obviously, given need be, and I actually got a phone call a few hours later that I was supposed to be in a meeting, and they wanted to know why I wasn't there, and that was kind of that made me not give, pardon my French, but two shits anymore after
mm,
something like that. Because I mean, I'd wake up in the middle of the night, write notes down. Like I tried to leave work at the gate, right? That's what everyone's supposed to do. Leave it at the gate. Don't bring it home with you. You got your family. I mean, if you have a family, and yeah, it was just affecting that. So I walked away from the situation. It was an interesting job, and I'm glad that I was a part of it. I got awarded a Bravo Zulu by the Navy for some of the accomplishments that the crew and I have done. So
that's
I'm
good.
pretty proud of that. Yeah,
Yeah, you should be. Yeah.
that was something special. I'll never forget that. But yeah, it's been quite an experience. You know, working with the Navy. I mean, it was it's a well, I mean, you've worked on some security things, right? Like that's
Yeah, the last thing I did was supporting at the Washington Navy Yard the Aegis ballistic missile program.
oh
So
wow,
Aegis BMD, for the Arleigh Burke destroyers. And all I was essentially doing was, you know, uh, writing up either ghosting pieces or writing my own stuff that really are program justifications. You're selling the program so it continues to get the money.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you had to have a clearance, and um, yeah,
yeah. And on the LCS topic again, quick, yeah, there's always been a lot of issues with that build of the.
yeah,
Like you said, it was a good idea if it would function properly, but I don't know. It was something I could say I worked on,
yeah,
and one
uh,
of them was named after our city, so that's pretty cool.
yeah. There you go.
That's a bonus. It's the last one I worked on too. LCS 25. Never went out to trials. Was offered, but never went out on sea trials with it. But back to you, not me. You're the star here,
Yeah.
Mr. Morton. Yeah, you are. This is incredible. So you got hooked up. You went through, did some shows, you did some films, got the agent. So how did you hear about the Star Wars side of things? Was that something your agent said? Hey, we got
Yeah.
this.
I mean, it was, well, in the 1970s, there were a lot of big budget American films that were being done in London. They were called runaway films because they were too expensive to do in Hollywood. And so there was, and also there was tax advantages that the Brits were providing. So all through the 70s and probably later, everybody knew what films were coming to town. I mean, the press was there. There was Screen International, which was the kind of Bible for all of us. We'd follow Screen International and get all the latest. But the agents, the agents basically, were on top of it before we were. So they would know, they'd be in touch with all the casting directors, and they would know what's coming down the pike. And so the agents would talk to the casting director and say, "Hey, you got anything for John?" Yeah, I think we do. Why don't you have him come in? And so you would meet with a casting director. In the case of Star Wars, that was Irene Lamb, and she would kind of look you over in the office for an interview and say, "Okay, yeah, we'll let you know." Um, they wouldn't necessarily say you passed, but well, you usually got a good feeling
Yeah.
that you either were going to make it or not. And so I don't know, a week or so later, I got a call from my agent saying, "Hey, they want you for Empire Strikes Back to play a rebel pilot." And so you just show up. In my case, my contract was for a rebel pilot, 2 days work. So it was I was on a daily rate, which was really great. And so I showed up and I said, "Well, I'm a rebel pilot. Who am I?" And they said, "Well, hey," and the guys that were the first, second, and third assistants were all guys I'd worked with in other films. So we were already family. Yeah, it wasn't, there were people I knew and then fellow actors and what have you that were there. And they said, "Well, you're going to be Mark Hamill's co-pilot." I went, "Oh man, that's great. People will remember that. I'm going to get all these great scenes with Mark." And I said, "Yeah, well, not so fast. You're already dead." They just come back from Finza in Norway, and Norwegian Extra kind of took the bullet for me. So I knew that I was, you know, I was going to be a one-hit wonder as far as the Star Wars was concerned. Um, and but quickly, from talking to Mark, I mean, I got pretty close with him. I ended up working 4 weeks on that film because they were having so much trouble with the technical aspects. So I did very well. On a daily rate, I made more money on Star Wars than I did for the whole previous year of all my jobs. It was pretty amazing. Anyway, Mark said, "Yeah, it's going to be 9 films altogether." So I knew that Star Wars was going to be around for a while, but I also knew that I was not going to be a part of it.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask you if you went. Did you make the trip to Norway?
No,
No.
no, that was I think they were there in February or March, and I want to say that I showed up the first day on the job after they came back because I remember everybody was talking about how cold it was and it was just awful.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It was like
Yeah,
record breaking at that
yeah,
time.
yeah. They froze the components of the camera equipment. It was pretty serious.
Yeah.
Now,
That's
the other thing I wanted to say for your audience is there were about, I don't know, I'd have to guess, but maybe 200 um, North American actors and actresses of all ages from Canada and the United States who were part of the expat, community in there. And there were about 20 or 30 that were kind of at my level of age and what have you. Uh, most of them were older. Um, and so the odds of getting hired for these big budget American films were very good because, as I later found out when I came back to New York, every time I went up for a job, there were 200 John Mortons, and the odds were not so good. But in London, there were only 5. So say, and so my odds were pretty good that if I got to the point of a casting call, I was in.
Yeah, you already had
So so all of us were pretty tight. We were all good friends. We knew each other socially. Um, it wasn't all that competitive. Um, yeah, it was a good scene.
Yeah. Yeah, it seems like there's, from my understanding and hearing different stories, it's always about camaraderie
Yeah,
between everyone.
yeah, and certainly a tribute to George and Gary. They modeled the Force in the way they treated all the people. Um, yeah, I mean it was a really, they paid everybody well, and they looked after you. It was a very unusual experience.
Yeah. Well, it kind of goes back to that sandbox you were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
It's like now you're in the sandbox, and it's like he
yeah,
appreciates and takes care of that sandbox that he's built.
exactly. Yeah, the Force is real, I always say.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. So when you came back and you shot here, like what was the set like? Was
I
the
wasn't. No, everything was done in London at Elstree that I was
okay
involved in.
that you were involved? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
My misunderstanding.
um, yeah. So I don't know what they shot for Empire Strikes Back in the United States. They might have. I don't know. I mean, certainly there was a lot done in Return of the Jedi.
Right.
The sequoias and all that, and then the Sarlacc pit in Yuma. Um, but a good example is the post production work was done in Los Angeles, and so I did not voice my lines they had a guide track, so they were capturing my voice, but it was somebody else that actually says my lines on the in Empire Strikes Back.
In the film.
Uh, by contrast, though, Superman 2, I was the astronaut in the
Nate.
module on the moon.
Yeah.
That's my voice. And the only reason why that's as it was, the dubbing was done at, I think, Twickenham Studios. And I happened to be available the day that they were going to dub Nate, which was my character. And just as easily, if I happened to be doing another job, they would have said, "Oh, okay, well, we wanted John, but he's not available. We'll get somebody else." So at that level of say under 5, nobody would recognize my voice necessarily. So it's not like Mark Hamill or Christopher Reeve or whatever, where they have to be the ones to do it because they're the stars. But for the rest of us journeyman actors, anybody can do the voicing.
Yeah, yeah.
So the only reason why I happen to be using you hear my voice on the moon was I was available the day that they were scheduled to
do it.
the looping, as they call it, the dubbing for Nate.
What did it feel like to put the suit on
Which
for the X-wing or the snow speeder? I'm sorry.
Well, I mean, I'd love to be able to give you a romantic shot on that, or even with Boba Fett.
Yeah, I was gonna get to
It
that
was a
too.
job. It was a job,
Yeah, I
uh,
suppose. Yeah, at the time. Yeah.
you know.
Well, I'm sure you've been asked
I
every.
guess with Bridge Too Far, since that was my first film, when the wardrobe guy said, "You're wearing Dirk Bogart's shirt," we're just changing the devices, and instead of being British, it's going to be American. And I thought, oh man, I'm wearing Dirk Bogart's uniform. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. What? Well, yeah. Well, I don't know. It's cool. I'd be put on a, you know,
Yeah,
fighter pilot suit would be fun. I was
yeah.
gonna try to get a helmet and have it ready for you to when I put it on for you and make you smile, but no, I don't. I don't have nothing like that. Well, you did some stunt work too. Little funny story here and there.
No, I don't know why. There might have been a stunt guy named John Morton. I think I'm credited as a stunt man for uh,
Was it Cannonball or Gumball
Cannonball
Rally?
Run or something.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's not me. So I am not a
Oh,
stunt man. I'm
well,
just an actor, or
well, shit.
I was an actor. Yeah.
Okay.
So I
Well,
can't give you the only stunt that I did was in Yanks, where um, I'm a GI hanging out with Richard Gere, and I'm riding my bicycle between two Quonset huts, and this guy gets a letter from his girlfriend, and he comes running by, and um, for some reason, I worked out with John Schlesinger. I said, "Hey, don't you think that if you want a little humor, why don't when he comes by, he comes a little too close to the bicycle, and I'll run into this trash can." And so I did that stunt, and they loved it.
hey, that's a stunt.
That's
You
the
could have
stunt.
got hurt. You could have got hurt.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't get paid for it, anything extra, but yeah,
Yeah. Well, you should have. You should call him up now and say, "Hey, my
he's
knee hurts from that day I hit that trash can."
he's gone.
Wow. So how did the Boba Fett situation arise? Was there something that
Well,
like
that's another example of Lucasfilm just really wanting to make things work. Um, Jeremy Bulloch got cast in another film for 2 days, and I guess the schedule having slipped, he was in the same situation I was in, where you know he was still working on Star Wars and this other film, he was booked for. And Lucasfilm, George said, "Well, we don't want to stand in the way of your, doing that. We'll find somebody to step in, because you know you got to get your career. It's your career, and it's important.
right?
We'll find somebody if we need to." And the schedule was such that they needed to, because on those 2 days that he was gone, they had to they scheduled they were going to shoot those scenes in the freezing chamber. And so, because I was a guy that had worked with the first, second, and third assistants on other films, they knew I was sort of a team player
Hmm.
and the same size as Jeremy. And so they offered it to me, and I said, sure. And likewise, I was not going to go to my agent and say, hey, they're making me do another job. I need another contract, and I want to stick them for the money. I mean, it's just, I said,
Right.
sure. So, the unions were involved, the agents were involved, and I sort of filled in, but I didn't get any direction from anybody, from Irving or George. So the night before, when Jeremy was taking his stuff off and ready to take off, I went to his dressing room. I said, "Hey, man, I don't know what's this character. How do I play him?" And he said, think Clint Eastwood in A Fistful of Dollars. Play everything slow and menacing." So that's what I did. And I
Yeah.
had no idea who Boba Fett was. Just he's a bounty hunter. Okay. And then instead of a stormtrooper outfit, he's got a green suit of armor. So there it was.
That's
Worked
it.
out great.
Yeah, it did. Well,
And what seems to be happening now, I guess, since The Mandalorian and whatnot, is that at most conventions, I'm signing sometimes more autographs as what I call Bespin Boba than as Dak. I mean, more people are interested in the Boba Fett connection. So, not always. I think in Savannah in September, it was mainly Dak. But whatever I did the convention before, I did a reckoning with the person I was working with. I said, put down a B for every autograph that you request you have here for Boba Fett, and a D for Dak. And we counted them up, and about 75-80% were B's. They were Boba Fett. So, I mean, it was huge. And I'm trying to remember where that was. It was one of the
Really?
conventions I did in the summer.
Well, I mean, yeah, the Mandalorian and the Boba Fett show really well. Even going back just to the films, like there wasn't a whole lot of lore behind Boba Fett. He
No.
just looked different, like you said. That was it. It just
Well,
like
I think, yeah, the two things Jeremy always said that when he came onto the set to get the upcheck from George and Irving about his costume, he was led out by the wardrobe people, and it was during a break in shooting, and he just walked out there, and suddenly all the electricians and props people and everybody in the soundstage turned around and just went, "Whoa!" And he said the armor, uh, was the look of this really captured people's interest and imagination. And what I think Jeremy brought to the table is that he, the slow and menacing quality of his every move was something that he, as an actor, gave to Boba Fett, which I have to say, Tim Morrison was not allowed to do for the Book of Boba. So Boba has a completely different look in
right.
that, in terms of body language. And somebody told me the other day that Tim was very upset about it, that he was being directed to, have a whole different posture.
Yeah,
It's unfortunate.
that's true.
I think the the thing that I did was I realized that I had this sort of face off with Darth Vader, who 6'7" and I'm 5'10". I led with my chin. So if you see the scene where he comes in and they're out in the corridor together, I got my chin with that strong helmet. Even though Vader is lording it over me, the chin is right out, saying, you may be a big guy, but man, I'll take you out if you do something I don't like.
Perfect. Yeah, I was gonna say you should have asked him for some more damn credits for the job that you did.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
At any point, did you ever think about going up to George about Dak and saying, "Listen, sir, I got some ideas.
No.
How about I don't get hit? The speeder gets hit. I
No.
pull Luke out."
No. No. What I've sort of done as my own Star Wars legend is, it's out there, where my theory is Dash Rendar came with his SAR team because he was on Hoth, and pulled me out and stuck me with a portable Bacta tank, and I was revived and then smuggled out on a ship. I can't remember what the name of it is, and I was not reconstructed sufficient to be a starfighter anymore, but I ended up being a Tapcaf proprietor, kind of like Rick and Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, somewhere out in the Outer Rim. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
And it was a place that was known for the music, so I had good musicians that came to this Tapcaf, and yeah, a
So
lot of credits. Yeah.
what started that the Bob Dylan was the one that, just jumping around a little bit back to music, he was the one that really inspired you to start learning to play the guitar, or
Well, actually, I started learning to play the guitar a year before I discovered Bob Dylan. Um, I don't know. I mean, at my school, the folk music was really big, and everybody in my class played guitars. And one guy that was in the class, who was sort of the Pied Piper, was a guy named Loudon Wainwright. He's the father of Rufus Wainwright, if anybody that knows it. And Loudy really was a star when he was 14. And so he inspired all of us. And when I came back to school, I was in Washington when the Martin Luther King demonstration was there,
Mm.
and Dylan played, and so I'd seen him, playing, his song.
He's got a lot of them.
Oh no, it's the famous one, but it's senior
Oh.
movie. But anyway, and Peter, Paul, and Mary sang it. But when we came back to school, all of us, Wainwright had Freewheeling Bob Dylan, and there was a second one, and the first one was just Bob Dylan, and that just blew everybody away, and I was part of it, and I just said, hey, I want to do this. And Wainwright actually went out and did precisely that. I mean, he's had innumerable records. But yeah, that was it. And of course, I was I was a teenage guy, and I had raging hormones, and having a guitar was as good as being an athlete in those days.
Oh yeah, yeah. You had to. Yeah, 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 yeah. I dabbled with music a little bit too.
Yeah.
Like I told you, learned to play the drums. What really inspired me was you know, I was born in the '80s, so like the '80s rock. I got a wide variety of music that I love now.
Mhm.
I don't like the heavy metal, death metal, none of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff is not for me. I've been on a Bad Company kick lately, but Paul Rogers is phenomenal.
Yeah.
But I saw Motley Crue in concert back in 2005 when they kind of got back together again. I was third row and I was just watching Tommy Lee, and man, can he drum!
Cool. Yeah. Yeah.
It was quite an experience. I couldn't hear for 3 days after that concert, like literally. I thought I was in trouble.
Yeah.
It was loud.
Well, Steve, we're into an hour, and my wife
yeah.
is kind of making noises. The dinner is getting there.
Yeah, no,
So,
sir,
do you want to wrap this up with a couple of more questions? And
yeah,
that,
no,
on your plate?
no, that's it, sir. I'm just this has been a surreal experience. I got to thank Mr. Luceno for this to get to meet you. I know you're out in public a lot, sir, and doing great things with the fans, but I have a hard time traveling, so I don't get around much. But
I was up in Minnesota twice. I did 3 conventions up there in the last few years. Before COVID, I did one at a VFW hall, which was a small one. And then after COVID, I did one downtown in Minneapolis. Both these are both in Minneapolis. And then the third I did in where Rockford. Is it Rockford where the clinic is?
in the Mayo Clinic.
Yeah, just south
Yeah,
of.
that's
I've been 3 times in your state. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, no, that's it. That's it. I don't want to keep you from dinner and the missus. I know how that whole situation goes, but
Yeah,
this was
happy wife, happy life.
that's a true statement, 100%. Well, thank you, sir, for
Yeah, I
for
got
your time.
more women in my family than men.
Ah,
Yeah, it's
well,
which is good.
yeah, no, yeah. I got two boys and 2 girls. I got 4 kids, and then I got a sister. But that's my life right now.
Well, we're all in balance then.
That's right. Yes, sir. Well,
All
thank
right,
you
Steve.
for all the things that you've done, sir, for
All right. Well,
Star
thanks
Wars.
for the interest, and yeah, get a hold of Jimmy and see if you can get him
Well,
on the record.
twist his arm for me because I'd love to
I
chat
will.
with him too. I'd appreciate that. And there you
All right,
guys have
buddy.
it. You have a good evening. We'll see you guys next time.
All right. May the force be with you.